What you're about to hear, it isn't rumor, it isn't opinion, or internet speculation. These are federal cases, people charged, prosecuted, and sentenced in the United States courts. And tonight, we're going to be breaking all that down. And these are for 4 real cases, 3 major drug trafficking cases, and 1 human smuggling case that all came from the Fed's website, different states, different defendants, but the same systems, greed, control, and exploitation are all parts of those lifestyles. And this is Fed by Fire. I'm Christian, and my job isn't to sensationalize any of this. It's to slow it down, break it apart, and show you how these operations actually work, like line by line, exactly as the government lays them out. Because once you understand the structure, you start to see just how close this stuff it really is to you, me, and your community. So let's get into it. The defendants are 33-year-old Demetrius Dwayne Powell and 41-year-old Dyreka Tyrese McCants, both from Grand Bay. Back on July 30th, 2024, narcotics agents showed up at a property in Grand Bay to arrest Powell on an outstanding robbery warrant. As they arrived, they spotted Powell and McCants walking out of a shed on their property. McCants, who was already on federal supervised release for a previous drug trafficking charge conviction, reportedly told agents, "Once y'all go in there, I'm gone. I'm done." And that was the big red flag right there. Inside the shed, the agents hit the jackpot. Nearly 2 pounds of 100% ice, and they said it was some high grade stuff, plus smaller amounts of rock, blow, and some bud, open vacuum sealed bags, scales, packaging materials, and 3 loaded firearms. After the arrest, things got even more incriminating. Powell and McCants made a recorded jail phone call. They three-wayed where Powell pushed McCants to take the full responsibility for the charges. And why? Because Powell has a violent criminal record already, including convictions for stabbing, assault, and felony domestic violence. So, by strangulation. And Powell also scolded McCants for ignoring his earlier warnings that the law enforcement might be closing in on them and that they may have been being watched. The shed, on top of that, agents examined the men's cell phones and found tons of evidence, texts, messages, photos, the whole nine, videos, all showing drug deals and illegal gun possession going back all the way from January to July of 2024. Let's talk about their sentencing. All right, let's get into it. So let's fast forward to recently. U.S. District Judge Terry F. Moore, he sentenced Powell to 240 months. That's 20 years in prison, and sentenced McCants to 144 months or 12 years. After serving their time, both will face 10 years of supervised release and I hope they get it together, man. With the mandatory drug testing and all the other requirements, no fines were imposed, but they have to pay $300 in special assessments total, and their firearms were forfeited. Well, they expected that to happen. This case was investigated by Homeland Security, by the FBI, by the Mobile County Sheriff's Office. This happened in Alabama, by the way, but with help from the FBI, ATF, and DEA. It was all prosecuted by Assistant U.S. Attorney Justin Rollard. And this is part of a bigger nationwide push called Operation Take Back America, which we've heard that a lot about that on this channel, that focuses on the Department of Justice's resources on fighting drug cartels and transnational crime, and as well as violent offenders to make communities safer. Sorry, gotta take a vape break. Alright, that's the latest on this case right here in Grand Bay, Alabama. Cases like this just show how federal and local law enforcement, how they work together. And, they're working together to get dangerous things off the streets, off our streets, really. So, what do you think about the sentences that were gave out? You can let me know in the comments if you want. All the feedback is appreciated. Now, let's go to number 2 we're going to talk about tonight. We've got a major drug trafficking case out of the Hampton Roads area, not too far from me. A North Carolina man has been sentenced to 10 years in federal prison for conspiring to distribute 10 keys of blow. And, that's over 22 pounds. This one involves shipping drugs from cross country through the mail right into Portsmouth, which Portsmouth, has its own struggle. But all info is straight from the U.S. Attorney's Office, so let's get into it. All right. The defendant is 41-year-old Kareem Akeem McMurrum from North Carolina. He had another person conspired to ship a package with 10 keys from San Diego, California, all the way to an address in Virginia Beach or Portsmouth. On February 5th, law enforcement investigators, they intercepted the package. So they removed the product, then they did a controlled delivery. So think about how much got through though. But they took the parcel to the intended address. McMurrin showed up and picked it up. But when the agents moved in to arrest him, things got a little sideways, a little sticky, because McMurrin fled at a high speed in his vehicle with his adolescent child inside. He even tried to toss the package during the chase or during his escape. But thankfully, he was located and arrested in March on an outstanding warrant, which there's no surprise there. And this week, McMurrin was sentenced to 10 years in prison for conspiracy to distribute and possession with intent. But the U.S. Attorney, Lindsay Halligan, she called it inherently dangerous and damaging on a transnational scale, saying that this administration is prioritizing the elimination of cartels and drug activity and protecting communities all around the country. The DEA, the special agent, our DEA Special Agent Christopher Gomez highlighted how local, state, and federal teams work together to make this happen. to intercept the drugs and to dismantle this network. The poster inspector, Damon E. Wood, he emphasized their aggressive efforts to keep narcotics out of the mail. The case was investigated by the DEA, the U.S. Postal Service, and prosecuted by Assistant U.S. Attorney Kevin Comstock and Special Assistant Mark W. West. Shout out to them. Another big win for law enforcement. I hope the boys, for the guys, I hope they are okay, but keeping massive amounts of blow off our streets in Virginia cases like this, they show how the risk that traffickers take and how one mistake can blow up everything and what the consequences when they get caught are. So tell me about your thoughts in the comment about this case and the sentences. Like I said before, all your feedback is so appreciated. All right, let's go to number 3. A 57-year-old man named Rangel Ramirez Manzano, I probably butchered that, just pled guilty in federal court to harboring an alien for financial gain, a felony punishable by up to 10 years in prison. Let's talk about what happened here. But that charge alone doesn't really tell you the full gravity of what actually happened here. So let's get into it. According to federal records, Ramirez Manzano knew the victim from his hometown in Mexico. And when she was younger, years later, he reconnected with her online, starts a long distance relationship, tells her to come to the US to be his girl. Now, let's see where this goes. Think about that. Somebody you already knew, somebody you already trust, who knows, your family, your children, someone who knows, where they live, where your kids live, where they sleep. He pays $17,000 to have her smuggled from a coyote across the border. He picks her up himself in Southern California, pays the smuggler, and they go their separate ways, but he paid him in full. And the moment she gets to Washington State, where his residence was, the relationship ends. He drops her like a bad habit, and the exploitation begins. All right, so we're gonna call this a cage without bars. This part, because almost immediately, Ramirez Manzano forces her into hard labor for his landscaping company. No pay, no freedom, no phone, restricted food, isolation, just basically slavery. Federal prosecutors say she performed at least $16,000 worth of uncompensated labor for months of back-breaking work across multiple job sites. She must have been going at it. And when she resisted, she was assaulted, physically threatened, and worst of all, he threatened her children that she had to leave behind in Mexico. This story is just sad, and that's leverage, unfortunately. But that's how control works. I pray for her and her children. And if you've ever been in a life, where somebody holds something over you, your citizenship or drugs or money or housing or your freedom, it's never going to end well. And you recognize this instantly. But this is a different setup with the same exact trap. So, we're going to talk about why this hits home for me and possibly for you, because I want to pause here, not to compare trauma, but to just explain something, something important. That when you live in survival mode, whether it's addiction, the streets, or dependency, control doesn't always look like chains. It can look like gratitude and help. Sometimes it looks like, you wouldn't make it without me. It looks like I'm here for you. It looks like you owe me. If you leave, it gets worse. And I've been in that state myself, not the same exact situation, but where my choices weren't really my choices, and where the cost of saying no felt just a little too high. So my heart goes out to her, but that's why this case hits home for me in cases like this matters. Because trafficking isn't always a van or a warehouse. It could be just a dude on the job site. And that's the true gravity of the situation. It could be in a quiet house in a suburb, a landscaping truck, a man pretending to be a savior. But, my heart goes out for her. But let's talk about how she got out of it, the escape. From February 2022 to April 24th, 2022, this woman was harbored in his home, and 2 months 2 months, that's 2 months of waking up, not knowing if today was going to be the day where things went from bad to really bad to worse until one day she escapes, saying, screw my citizenship. She runs to a neighbor and asks them to call 911. She's not worried about going back to Mexico. She's worried about staying alive. Monroe police respond. They find her with multiple injuries to her body and face. She's taken for medical treatment, and the FBI joins the investigation to hit this one home for a home run. Ramirez Manzano is arrested in September 2022 and has remained in federal custody ever since, but delayed for years due to mental competency hearings and evaluations. But now he's admitted guilt and he's ready to take his licks. So let's talk about the money trail and how they came up with that $16,000 number. Here's something that matters. Law enforcement, they see $16,000 in cash from his work truck. Well, that's what they see. Who knows if that was really all from her, but still, that money is being forfeited and returned to the victim as restitution. Hell, I didn't think they'd do that. Matching the value of the labor that she was forced to perform. Well, she got a little retribution. So let me be clear here. No amount of money is going to fix what she went through. No amount of money repays her stolen freedom or her sense of safety. But this restitution can be a little bit of accountability. It's a paper trail. It's proof that this wasn't a misunderstanding, that this was serious, that it was financial exploitation. And let's talk about what comes next. So, prosecutors are recommending 5 years in federal prison for through the judge. The judge, though, can sentence him up to 10, which, if you ask me, I think he deserves somewhere between there. But he's a legal permanent resident, but his conviction means his status can be revoked and that he will likely be deported after he does his time, after serving his sentence. So the case is being prosecuted by Assistant U.S. Attorneys Kate Krisham and Rachel Yamini, with Krisham serving as the Western District of Washington's coordinator for human trafficking. All right. And that matters because this wasn't just an immigration case. This was trafficking at its best, forced labor. And next, this is a big one. This is our last one of the night. United States Attorney Ken Sorcerin announced that Lyndon David Lightburn, age 52, of Los Angeles, California, was sentenced by the United States District Judge Jill Otake to 72 months 6 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. And let's talk about y'all how he got that sentence. Lightburn pleaded guilty to conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, specifically Fetty, that HBH, the ice, they all go hand in hand. And he is the final conspirator to be sentenced in this case. So, let's break it down, y'all. All right, let's talk about the time frame. According to the court records, this conspiracy operated from September 2020 through June 30th, 2021. So they had about little under a year run. That's nearly 10 months of continuous drug trafficking activity during a period when, fatty deaths are already accelerating nationwide. So more gas to the fire. But let's see what happened there and how this ended. Let's talk about the supplier. Lightburn, also known by the street name Soldier, operated as a primary mainland supplier. So they were shipping it to Honolulu, I think. Federal prosecutors established that Lightburn supplied more than 6.6 keys of fatty powder, 6.6 keys of H, and 2.8 keys of crystal. So he was living in LA, I think, and shipping it to Honolulu. So these drugs were supplied to a Honolulu based drug trafficking organization, my bad. Or they call them DTOs. The organization, that DTO, was co-led by two men from Detroit, Michigan, not even from Hawaii. Gabriel Anton Eberhardt, 43, aka Stacks, and Jason Darnell Smith, 42, aka Famous, or they called him Sweets. So the DTO sourced drugs from Linden Lightburn in Los Angeles and a man named Robert Adams of Philadelphia. And, so this was a big case. This was spread all over the country. So let's talk about the method they were doing. The drugs were not driven or flown, just like the last case we talked about in Norfolk. They were shipped, as that seems to be the thing, as when I was doing it. But Lightburn and Adams, they of course used the United Postal Service to get their product from A to point B, from the narcotics from LA directly to Honolulu, concealing the packages sent across the state lines and over the Pacific Ocean. So once they were received in Honolulu, the Fetty mixed with the H, the pure H, the ice, and some of them counterfeit M30s, of course. And of course, those contain Fetty. But they emphasized that this is in video, just like we talk about in videos, just how strong this shit is and how harmful it is. So let's talk about the investigation, because this case was not built overnight. This took a lot of time to catch all the players involved. It was a large scale multi agency investigation, including the FBI, the DEA, all the alphabet boys, the ATF, and of course the United Postal Service, which they're own people these days, and the Honolulu Police Department. So during the investigation, agents conducted dozens of controlled buys and other purchases of firearms, 15 search warrants executed on residences, rental, storage units, Airbnbs, mailed parcels, they were stashing it everywhere. Let's talk about what they seized. All right. As a direct result of those operations, law enforcement they seized more than 15 keys of Fetty, H, and ice, combined with 7 firearms, including assault rifles, semi-automatic pistols, and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. So these boys was ready. They was ready, and they seized one vehicle and more than $250,000 in cash tied to the drug proceeds that these boys was running. And this was not just a street level dealing operation. This was organized. They were armed. This was interstate trafficking at its best. All right, so let's talk about what the government said about everything that happened. I'm going to be quoting them. I'm going to be quoting first U.S. Attorney Ken Sorensen. He stated, "Today's sentence brings a close of years of collaboration," which I'm about to read their sentences. So, between the U.S. Attorney's Office and our partners across multiple federal and local law enforcement agencies, as we worked tirelessly to bring down justice to this large scale, prolific, and dangerous trafficking network. So, yeah. And he emphasized that dismantling drug enterprises that funnels illicit proceeds into Hawaii remains a top priority for their government, particularly when trafficking is tied to firearms. You know, they love people getting for that. And things tied to violence. Brings the heat, y'all. But let's talk about the FBI's response. David Porter, special agent in charge of this case of the FBI's Honolulu field office, and this case, he represented years of collaboration between multiple law enforcement agencies to dismantle this group. So he basically said the same thing as the last group, that it was one of Hawaii's most dangerous drug trafficking organizations, blah, blah, blah. He added that federal authorities will continue using every tactic available, every resource to remove violent drug traffickers from their communities. All right, and let's talk about the DA's response to this. Anthony Crescent, his deputy special agent in charge for the DEA Los Angeles division, he stated that, the sentencing closes the loop on a network that should have been closed of incessant drug traffickers whose crimes threatened the safety and well-being of the island communities. He reiterated the DEA's commitment to stemming the flow of Fetty, ice, and other dangerous substances. They're on it. So be good at it, y'all. The ATF's response to this was the ATF acting special agent in charge, Eric Jackson. He highlighted the importance of this case, the importance of integrity, cooperation, stating when federal, state, and local law enforcement work together, our resources are unlimited and our efforts are unmatched. Let's talk about what the Postal Inspection had to say about it, what their response was. USPS Inspector in Charge Stephen Sherwood warned about the danger of mail-in narcotics, stating that the trafficking of dangerous drugs like Fetty and ice through the U.S. mail puts Postal Service employees and other communities at risk. But yeah, I say Fetty and ice, y'all, because of YouTube's community guidelines. But the postal inspectors, he said, will aggressively pursue anyone who uses the mail to distribute deadly drugs. Well, they did what they needed to. Let's talk about all the defendants and what their sentences were. So I might butcher kind of some of these names here. Y'all work with me. Give me some grace. This case involved multiple defendants, all prosecuted in the District of Hawaii. Let's talk about Gabriel Eberhardt, aka Stacks. He got 30 years in federal prison with 5 years of supervised release. Let's next Jason Smith, aka Famous or Sweets. He got 14 years in prison with 5 years of supervised release. Mark Marzes Jr., aka Green, he got 12 years in prison with 5 years of supervised release. Robert Adams, aka Trey or T Block, he got 10 years in prison with 5 years of supervised release. And next, Jared Northern, aka White Boy J or Gage, got 10 years in prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. Next, Jennifer Ashcraft, aka Jessie or Jess, got 37 months in prison with 5 years of supervised release. Zachariah Maris, aka Kai, he got 37 months in prison with 3 years of supervised release. Isaiah Marks, aka Seth, got 24 months in prison with 4 years of supervised release. Tishana Kayo Boroza got 9 months in prison with 3 years of supervised release. Michael Garrett, aka Sideburns or Burns, got 3 months in custody with 5 years of supervised release. And Mr. Lyndon Lightburn, aka Soldier, got 72 months in prison with 5 years of supervised release. So it looks like they all got the same amount of probation when they're done. But let's talk about some broader context here. This prosecution is part of Operation Take Back America, which we have heard about that a lot on this channel. A Department of Justice initiative combining organized crime, drug trafficking, task forces, and Project Safe Neighborhoods were all a part of bringing these guys to justice. So let's talk. They said the stated goal is to eliminate cartels and transnational criminal organizations, to disrupt drug trafficking, 3 involving drugs, Fetty, H, ICE, moving through neighborhoods, through the mail, across state lines. We all broke them down, and we had one involving tonight, human smuggling, where a person wasn't treated at all like a human. Just labor, leverage, and profit. Different charges, same pattern. Every one of these cases started with someone thinking it's just business, that they do it all the time, that it's just one move, that it won't reach them. And every one of them ended in federal prison. So let that be a message to y'all. If you're watching this from the outside, understanding this, these cases, they don't happen overnight. It's a progression. They're built slowly. Every purchase by purchase, shipment by shipment, that's how these cases are made, threat by threat, until the weight finally collapses and everything underneath it breaks. And if you're watching this because you've lived it, then I'm glad you've made it out. But the dependency, the control, the fear, the manipulation, it's just very hard to live with. Just to know awareness is the first crack in the system. So this show exists to tell the truth without the hype and without the filters. This is Fed by Fire, and I'm your host, Christian Whitlow. Y'all do me a favor, y'all stay sharp, stay free, and I'll see you on the next one. yeah, I'll catch y'all on the next one. Also, I wanted to give a little announcement that I'm gonna be doing the multi-series um part on my life. I'm gonna be doing like 4 or 5 videos. It's gonna consist of about 3 hours long. Just give y'all a more detail in my story and where I come from, my 14 years in addiction, going in and out of rehab, dealing with overdoses, putting my family through hell, and almost losing my arm. And yeah, so I wrote the book and I've been breaking down these cases. I had a little video, about my life that I had made, but it's not something I was proud of exactly. So I deleted it because I think y'all deserve something a little better. But hopefully I'll have that in the works this weekend and to y'all by sometime next week. But until then, I'm going to be doing some more press releases later on this week when I get off of work and stuff, and probably a couple reaction videos this week. I appreciate all the love and support. You guys have a great week. Back to reality tomorrow. See ya.